Thank you, Laskin Corlett. If you could tell me when I've reached my 2-minute limit. Minister, it won't come as news to you that the household charge is necessary, nor will it come as news to you, I'm sure, that the household charge is not universally popular. With regard to the latter, I don't suppose the household charge is any different to any other form of taxation. With regard to the former, as the Minister will be aware, this government inherited a memorandum of economic and financial policies between the last government, signed by the last government, voted on by every backbencher in the last government, which included a commitment to introduce a new residential property tax. Furthermore, the Memorandum of Understanding on Specific Economic Policy Conditionality, dated the 8th of December 2010, contained a list of actions for the third review, actions to be completed by the end of the third quarter of 2011. Those included a commitment that the Government will ensure that effective measures are in place to cap the contribution of the local government sector to general government borrowing at an acceptable level. So in that context, this government introduced a household charge of €100 to fund vital local services. Nevertheless, Minister, the manner in which this charge is being collected is making it even more unpopular than it already was, and perhaps more unpopular than it needs to be. The County of Clare has one of the higher compliance levels in the country, with a compliance level of 70%. So 70% of the approximately 55,000 houses in Clare, or households in Clare, have paid, which means that approximately 16,500 homes have not paid. Now, it is very disconcerting for people who have paid it to see services still being equal services still being provided for those who haven't paid it. But it's even more disconcerting, Minister, for those who have paid it to receive letters asking them to pay it and asking them to provide proof of having paid it to the very authority where they brought those cheques.
I'll ask you to conclude, sir.
Yeah, Minister, notwithstanding the fact that only 16,500 households haven't paid it, 33,000 letters issued last week at a cost to Clare County Council of €15,000, including letters to many people who had paid it, including letters to people who were deceased and long deceased in many instances. And people are, I would say, very rightly aggrieved at the manner that this is being administered and collected.
Environment, Community and Local Government, 4 minutes.
Thank you, Laskin Corlett. In addressing this matter, I think we should begin with some first principles. Ireland is committed under the EU-IMF programme to the introduction of a property tax, and we must put the funding of locally delivered services on a sound financial footing, improve accountability and better align the cost of providing services with the demand for such services, as Deputy McNamara has rightly pointed out. It was considered that in the light of the complex issues involved, a local property tax would take time to introduce, and accordingly, to meet the requirements of the EU-IMF programme, the Government decided to introduce an interim household charge in 2012. This was done via the Local Government Household Charge Act 2011, and under the Act, an owner of a residential property on the liability date of the 1st of January 2012 is liable to pay the household charge unless otherwise exempted or entitled to claim a waiver. The household charge funds local services delivered by local government, services upon which many people depend. However, currently a sizable number of liable property owners are failing to discharge their legal obligations. Non-compliance by liable owners means reduced resources for local authorities for them to use to support our communities, and places a greater burden on those owners who do not, or who do pay the charge, that is, their neighbours, colleagues and friends. A bureau is in place in the Local Government Management Agency to administer the charge on a shared service agency basis for all local authorities. The legislation places the collection of the charge under the care and management of the local authorities, and it is a matter for the local authorities to use their local knowledge and judgment in issuing reminders to households, and local authorities have been working with the bureau to try and do so. For my part, I expect the local government system to actively pursue those who are liable and who are people who are simply refusing to pay. And I fully support the local authorities in seeking to encourage compliance by liable property owners with the Oireachtas legislation. There was no existing comprehensive database of residential properties or owners prior to the household charge being introduced. It's a sad reflection on the state that we couldn't say who owned property. The collection of the household charge via self-assessment then, through that declaration, provides for the collation of such information in relation to residential property. This work is an essential element for the effective implementation of the local government tax in 2013, and it is in everybody's interest that this work continues. Local authorities are continuing to identify undeclared properties through appropriate data sharing provisions that have been outlined in the 2011 Act. And strenuous efforts have been made to try and match the self-declared information with other data sets and in refining the resulting data. The letters that are currently being issued by local authorities are based on information provided by the Property Registration Authority. Such data sets are imperfect, and indeed, as Deputy McNamara knows well from his legal background, in some cases the information may not have been updated with the most relevant or recent details. In other cases, address formats vary from data set to data set. And as a consequence of names and addresses having been entered and recorded differently in computer systems, and of the same addresses appearing in different formats from data set to data set, members of the public have received letters from local authorities in error. And I appreciate that the receipt of a letter in such circumstances is an irritation to those who have already paid. And the Local Government Management Agency has had great difficulty in getting access to good information. And they've had to spend a considerable amount of time in dealing with other public bodies in order to get agreement and protocols in place to comply with the Data Protection Act in order to ensure that people's rights and responsibilities and privileged information is not made available to perhaps competitors, particularly in the public utilities. So any person who has received a letter in error need only contact the Household Charge Bureau, and I know that it causes inconvenience to do so, and the issue will be dealt with. Similarly, liable owners who experience other difficulties should contact their local authorities or the Bureau.
Minister, I don't disagree with anything you've said, but I would say that it's more than an irritation to receive those letters. For some, it's a source of worry. My own parents received them and were very worried that they had a tax liability. I know several people who were also very upset because they received letters in respect of people who had died. There is a register of births, marriages and deaths in the country, and I just wonder whether that is one of the databases that should be cross-referenced. There's also the issue of letters being sent to many people in the same household, when of course there's only one household charge to be paid, in instances where even that one has been paid. But the other issue, and you mentioned my legal background, on that basis I would be interested in finding out what was the legal basis for compelling finance officers in local authorities across the country. And I don't expect that the Minister has an answer to that right now, but if the legal basis could be outlined, maybe by way of a letter at a later date, for instructing local government officials to send out these. And furthermore, I understand that councils were instructed by correspondence on the 2nd of July that 3 letters were to issue and the dates in which they were to issue. Well, the first letters have gone out, and as Deputy Farrell has pointed out, have caused annoyance, worry, grief in many instances if these errors could be amended and rectified in advance of the 2nd and 3rd batch of letters going out.